Doctor Who and Sherlock, two of my favourite TV shows. Both are written by Stephen Moffat, Mark Gatiss and occasionally Stephen Thompson too, and they both share some actors here and there as well. But in this video I want to discuss the less obvious similarities between both shows, the parallels and themes that crop up in both, which is no surprise because at times Moffat and Gatiss were writing them both simultaneously. But it's something that hadn't really occurred to me until quite recently, and when I did realise that there were connections between the two shows, I started looking for more, and so I've come up with a list of parallels between Doctor Who and Sherlock episodes, especially those that are written around the same time. So what's the earliest kind of parallel, connection, similarity that I could find? Well, to be honest, there wasn't really anything in Series 1, to my knowledge. I mean, please put in the comments below if there's anything that you notice. But I think because Series 1 of Sherlock was kind of written and in production a little bit before Doctor Who, or around the same time as Doctor Who Series 5, but the two weren't fully integrated. It's not really until you get the Series 6 of Doctor Who and Series 2 of Sherlock that the similarities start cropping up. The first one that I've noticed is the kind of theme of relationships and love. In Sherlock Series 2, the first episode, A Scandal in Belgravia, you have the romance between Sherlock and the woman, Irene Adler, and Moffat presents that as something quite unique, quite special for Sherlock, certainly, who ultimately is the kind of doctor figure of the show. There's a lot of similarities between the two. They're both kind of misfits, social misfits and outsiders, a little bit alien, but obviously not in a literal sense with Sherlock, obviously in a literal sense with the Doctor. And I think the Doctor's relationship with River, which really kind of starts to get going in Series 6, 2011, around the same time as Sherlock Series 2, which was in production that year because it came out in 2012. But they are quite similar in that, well, the Doctor and Sherlock are similar to start with, and then River's song, like Irene Adler, is a bit naughty, a bit wild, you know, and she's the one for the Doctor. She is the woman as much as Irene is for Sherlock. In essence, they're both Moffat love stories. They both have a tragic element, I guess, because both the Doctor and River and Irene and Sherlock are separated by circumstance. So it's sad in that way, but also beautiful because both sets, both couples kind of click instantly and they just go together. And there's that feeling of complete devotion. You never believe that it would be any other way, the Doctor and River and Sherlock and Irene. And that's interesting to note how Stephen Moffat writes love, I suppose, and how that is similar in both shows. I've kind of already touched on the similarities between the Doctor and Sherlock as characters. Both are insanely intelligent, socially awkward, social outcasts, and both are heroes. In particular, around this time, Moffat really challenges their status as heroes. There's that idea of them kind of getting a bit too big for their boots, becoming too arrogant, too confident, and having to pay the price. And that comes in the form of the Doctor's death in Series 6. Throughout that whole series, you've got the story arc of him heading to his death, basically, that's already happened earlier in the series, but it's looming there in the background. And then in Sherlock Series 2, the Reichenbach fall, the series finale, is, again, a very similar sort of thing. There's a real sense of impending doom, of something bad going to happen, a final confrontation between Sherlock and Moriarty, and of course that ends with Sherlock having to fake his death. Well, in both cases, the Doctor and Sherlock fake their deaths, but they make it look as though they have actually died to the outside world. And then in Sherlock Series 3 and kind of into Series 7 of Doctor Who, both characters are redefined as quite mysterious, you know, recluses, I suppose, because in Series 7 Doctor Who, you've got things like the little minisode where he deletes himself from the info, whatchamacallit, and, you know, there's that whole thing about asking the question, Doctor Who, putting the mystery back into the character. He does become more unknown, and the same thing happens with Sherlock in Series 3. He's very much more in the shadows, not in the forefront like he was in Series 1 and 2. A variation of this idea is explored with Clara Oswald in Doctor Who and Mary Watson in Sherlock. Both characters that have to pay the price, i.e. death, for the decisions they've made in the past. To get to that point. With Clara, she's become too confident, too self-assured. That is something that she has done willingly, intentionally. With Mary, it's the whole thing about her past as a spy. That is something she loved doing, but ultimately it was going to end in death somehow. It wasn't going to end well for her. She would never be able to return to a normal life, and that in itself actually is quite similar to Danny Pink in Series 8 of Doctor Who, where Clara kind of attempts to lead that double life thing, the domestic stuff and life in the TARDIS with the Doctor, and that completely fails as well, although in that instance it's Danny that has to pay the price. But ultimately in the end, Clara does pay the price herself in Face the Raven, and the same thing happens to Mary in the Series 4 opener of Sherlock, when her past as a spy comes back to haunt her, and it doesn't end well, it ends with her death. Following this in Sherlock, there is a period where Sherlock and Watson are slightly more distant in The Lying Detective, the following episode. And again, friendship is another theme that's kind of very prevalent in both shows. You have the Doctor and the companion in general throughout Doctor Who, but especially the Doctor and Clara is something that was very much developed in Series 7 and in Series 8 and 9. And that's a friendship where there are highs and lows. For example, Kill the Moon, the most notable low in the 12th Doctor and Clara's relationship. And that's quite similar to The Lying Detective, when Sherlock and Watson, have to reconcile at the end, ultimately. They fall out. It's nobody's fault, really. They're both sort of justified, but they end up making up. They don't go their separate ways because their friendship is so strong. A bit like the 12th Doctor and Clara, the idea of the hybrid in Doctor Who Series 9, where they have such a strong friendship as well, to the extent that it actually threatens the universe and has destructive capabilities. Moving into 2017 and Doctor Who Series 10, a notable similarity is, well, firstly, the Doctor and Missy, which is quite similar in some ways to Sherlock and Eurus, two characters that kind of went their separate ways at birth, had a fallout, although they were initially, well, friends for the Doctor and Missy, certainly. For Eurus and Sherlock, not necessarily friends, but they were, they were acquainted. They were family, I guess. There was that strong bond there that they then lost in future years. And the final problem is a story that's about them making up and working out their differences, I suppose. Eurus, like Missy, is a mentally unstable character, and both characters use music as a relief for their condition, if you will, and to communicate their amazing minds. It's a bit more obvious in Sherlock, with the violin, obviously, in that beautiful scene right at the end of the final problem, when Sherlock and Eurus just play the violin together, they play a little duet. Similar sort of thing in Knock Knock, in Series 10 of Doctor Who, which kind of gave the game away, to be honest, that it was Missy in the vault, because she plays the piano to the Doctor, and they kind of communicate that way. He says one thing to her, and she responds by playing the piano. So another similarity there, the idea of mentally unstable people, but there's always that redemption for them as well. For both Missy and for Eurus, it's not the end of the line. There is hope for them through music in one way, but also just reconciling and working out their differences and what went wrong at an early age. So that's all for this video. I do hope you've enjoyed it. It was just a few little thoughts, stray thoughts in my head that I wanted to put into, a format that I could share with other people and discuss. Just something that occurred to me recently, as I say. If there are any more similarities or parallels between Doctor Who and Sherlock that you've noticed and I haven't mentioned, please put them in the comments below. And I'll see you very soon for some more brand new videos. So thank you so much for watching, guys, and bye for now.